Hello, I'm James Ezimoha. Welcome to Africa News, where we bring you the latest updates from across the African continent. Let's see your headlines. Ghana inaugurates special task force to crack down on illegal gold mining in the country. Analysts react to 30% trade tariffs imposed on South Africa by US President Donald Trump. Farmers in Libya turn to aquaponics to tackle growing water crisis. In Libya, a new farming initiative is using aquaponics to produce vegetables and fish while conserving water. The startup says the method offers a sustainable solution to the country's growing water crisis.
Hydro Harvest, a Libyan startup, is tackling water scarcity by merging fish farming with hydroponic vegetable production. Founded in 2023, it began harvesting its first crops in March this year using aquaponic technology. According to UNICEF, agriculture consumes over 80% of the country's fresh water, and domestic demand is set to rise sharply. Founder Abdallah El-Fandi explains how the system merges fish and plant farming into a single, self-sustaining cycle.
Hydro Harvest is a modern farm that produces vegetables and raises tilapia using aquaponic technology. Aquaponic merges two technologies, the technology of fish farming and the technology of hydroponics, or what is known as soilless farming. These two are integrated into a unified system where the outputs from fish farming are used as inputs for plant production in a closed cycle.
He says the approach maximizes limited resources while preserving the land for long-term use.
First, Hydro Harvest is a farm that produces vegetables and raises fish at high volume, utilizing limited resources such as water and arable land in an effective and efficient way. We don't waste these resources, and at the same time, the land where we plant is not exploited, and we can use it for many years with continuity and without treatment.
As Libya's water crisis deepens, innovations like Hydro Harvest may offer a model for sustainable farming, balancing food security with ecological resilience in one of North Africa's driest regions.
The 30% tariff hike by the United States has triggered concern in South Africa over the country's heavy trade reliance on Washington. Analysts say the move could cost thousands of jobs and urge Pretoria to expand ties with alternative partners like BRICS nations.
South Africa faces a steep economic hit after US President Donald Trump imposed a 30% tariff on goods from Pretoria and over a dozen others. The US is South Africa's second biggest trading partner, and analysts warn that a failure to diversify could prove costly. The citrus industry alone may lose 35,000 jobs. Analysts say the timing and politics behind the tariffs reflect deeper tensions and an urgent need for new markets.
There is a direct connection between BRICS and the attitude of Trump towards the tariffs and even the date on which they are announced. Okay? However, from a South African point of view, there is another angle to it, because from 2012 in our NDP, National Development Plan, it was already documented there that we should diversify our markets where we sell our goods. Had we followed that advice from day one, we wouldn't be in this mess, because we were not supposed to be this dependent on Americans, and our dependency is not even that severe even today. However, BRICS presents a credible market as an alternative to the US as we speak today.
But for East London's industrial development zone, the potential fallout could be devastating.
US market is very key to us because in fact, our assessment is that the automotive industry actually our lifeblood. I mean, in terms of our own revenue now, we get most of the revenue from them in a more sustainable way. In fact, they represent the bedrock of what sustains us in terms of revenue. The great majority of our revenue comes from them. I would say 60 to 65% of revenue comes from the automotive industry. Therefore, if it were to be affected, we will definitely going to have problems.
While President Ramaphosa has rejected the tariff hike as inconsistent with trade data, the call for long-term diversification is growing louder. With BRICS expanding and global alliances shifting, South Africa's trade strategy may now face a crucial turning point.
Ghana is cracking down on illegal gold trade with a new national task force. President Mahama says it's part of a broader strategy to clean up the gold sector and recover billions lost through smuggling.
Ghana has launched its first national anti-gold smuggling task force, backed by soldiers and police. Authorities say around 600 tons of gold were smuggled in the last decade, costing the country over $12 billion in lost revenue. Officials say the new initiative, supported by a recently created gold board, aims to restore control and boost public reporting through financial rewards.
The task force is not just a security initiative, it is a strategic arm of national economic transformation, purposefully designed to restore integrity, accountability, and value to Ghana's gold sector. The Ghana Gold Board was established to dismantle the black market economy surrounding the gold sector. And today's inauguration of the Gold Board Task Force signals our readiness to act decisively.
It is estimated that about 600 tons of gold have been smuggled out of our country in the last 10 years. In fact, in the last 5 years alone, approximately $12 billion has left the shores of Ghana unaccounted for. Mr. President, imagine $12 billion translating into foreign exchange and supporting Ghana's reserve position. Certainly, our national currency will be stable.
Goldbod's CEO says the task force has been fully prepared to act without fear or favour.
We've provided the necessary orientation, the training, logistics, and resources for the task force you see here to be able to do their work effectively and fearlessly, no matter whose ox is God.
Ghana's government hopes the new task force will bring transparency to its gold sector. Experts say stopping smuggling is key to increasing state revenues and stabilizing the national currency.
Deadly protests in Kenya have left at least 11 people dead and 2 hospitals damaged. The arrest comes amid public anger over police brutality and rising political tensions.
At least 2 hospitals were attacked during Monday's anti-government protests in Kenya, marking the 35th anniversary of the Saba democracy rallies. Demonstrations erupted over alleged police abuse following the death of a blogger in custody, with 11 reported killed. Families of victims say their relatives were not part of the protests, but were caught in the chaos or targeted indiscriminately.
He had finished school. We have lived together well. He has never wronged me. We had spoken in the morning because I had left earlier, and he had told me, I will stay indoors. I will not go to the protests, because I had asked where he was. I heard he was in a quiet place, and he even told me he will just be in the house. Even if you listen, there is no noise where I am, he told me. He was shot on his way from his house to my house.
Health workers are now demanding round-the-clock police protection after a hospital was stormed by armed men seeking treatment.
There was some damages all around, and at least the healthcare workers took safety, and they had even to masquerade as they had to camouflage as patients, so they had to put on patients' gown, so that now at least they could not really get to know who are the health workers working here.
We are putting the government on notice that all health facilities, and especially those ones in the hotspots, must be provided with armed security from the Kenya police. And not only during the demonstrations, But all the time, because as we have said, several health workers have been assaulted in this hospital.
The unrest has reignited calls for justice and accountability from both victims' families and frontline workers. Human rights groups say the protests highlight deepening frustration over police violence and poor public services in Kenya.
Liberia's President Joseph Boakai has launched a sweeping reconciliation drive decades after the country's brutal civil wars. For the first time, the government has apologized to war victims and honored past presidents killed during political upheaval.
President Boakai has kicked off what his office calls a historic reconciliation campaign, offering the first formal government apology to victims of Liberia's civil wars. The move follows decades of calls for justice after two brutal conflicts that killed 200,000 people. Boakai says the nation must confront its past and draw strength from it to build a peaceful future.
Liberia has borne the wounds of history. These wrongs have left scars, but they have also left us with responsibility. A responsibility to turn our sorrows into seas of hope, to draw from our pain a renewed sense of purpose, and to ensure that the sacrifices of the past were not in vain.
Descendants of victims of the Civil War say the reburial service finally brought a measure of closure.
I am super excited and can't believe that in my life I've been able to see this 25 years after. I'm 76 years old and I still feel strong enough to be able to continue to honor him, to be able to come here.
Definitely doesn't fix it, but I do think and agree that the president is trying to reconcile. It's all about reconciliation, something that I agree with. Because yes, we can forgive, but we can never ever forget. And we must forgive in order for us to be able to move on and remember our parents' legacies.
Boakai's reconciliation campaign has revived pressure for long-delayed war crimes trials. Despite an executive order issued last year and renewed in April, Liberia has yet to prosecute those responsible for some of West Africa's worst atrocities.
Well, that's all we have today in Africa News. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.